Hello everyone. Today I'll be doing a World of Tanks equipment tier list. I thought I would do this because there's a lot of conflicting information on the internet, especially from most CCs, which don't really know what they're talking about, except for these two of course. So I thought I would give my input and maybe it'll help you. So let's get right into it. Alright. Starting off, low noise exhaust. I'm gonna have to put that in C tier. So the reason it's in C tier is because it's weird. For light tanks, it's S tier, right? If you want to scout, this is a necessary piece of equipment. For any other tank, it's usually F tier. But for example, there are some tanks that can benefit from it. Usually tanks that need a high camo value to perform. For example, the shit pack, okay? This thing is pretty accurate, very accurate actually, has very good dispersion values, it already has good speed, so you could make the argument that since this tank is a sniper, and it's kind of huge, so its camo isn't the greatest, you could benefit a lot from a low noise. So for example, if my crew, assuming I have food, all the camo stuff, okay, 35%, that's a okay camo for a tank destroyer. But then if I put a bounty low noise, which you should get a bounty low noise just for your light tanks anyway, it jumps up to 42%. This is like light tank territory of stationary camo, so that's pretty good. Other than that though, I wouldn't really put it on things like medium tanks or heavies, because as what most things in C tier will be, they're not bad, but there are better alternatives. Alright, vertical stabilizer. Used to be S tier, A tier, around that region. I would have to say it's now B tier, okay? Now, I know Quickie Baby likes to say that tanks don't need vertical stabilizers anymore, and a lot of people think that he means that it should be F tier, but Quickie Baby is sort of half right. Vertical stabilizers is good, but ever since Equipment 2.0 came out, there are a lot of new equipment that can have more of an impact on your vehicle. So, of course, that argument that it's good, but there are better alternatives would place it in C tier. However, lots of tanks, if not almost all tanks, should use vertical stabilizer. Just as a little Easter egg side note, gun lane drive is actually included in vertical stabilizer icon right here. You see that? Yeah, there you go. So, generally, you would want to use vertical stabilizers on most tanks. However, there are certain exceptions, like, for example, take the Object 703 version 2, okay? This tank already has very, very good dispersion values, right? Let's put a vertical stabilizer and see what happens. Alright, there. It went from 0.12 to 0.10. Are you going to notice this change? Not really. Here's one example of a tank that probably should use vertical stabilizer. Here, put vertical stabilizer on the 60 TP, it goes from 0.22 to 0.18. It's a more noticeable change. And of course, you gotta think of absolutes as well, right? You gotta think to yourself, is 0.18 a good dispersion value? Alright? Is it worth getting it to this value? Is this good? Because if you think about it, look, we put this, let's put bounty vert stabs, and then a bounty rotation mechanism. There you go, we got it all the way down to 0.14. Both these high-level equipment, we got it down to 0.14. The 703 is 0.12 without any equipment, right? So you can see, not all tanks need vertical stabilizers. Spall liner. That's gonna have to go into D tier. So the Spall liner blocks HE damage, and I think also blocks some RAM damage or whatever. The thing is, ever since the HE nerf, it was already useless, now it's even more useless. In theory, it would be great if I could block all HE. If this equipment blocked all HE, it would immediately be A or B tier, because that just means artillery is no longer an issue. But it doesn't. I'll be driving my mouse. I have this on there. I still take 400 HE damage from arty. It just doesn't really work. The whole reason this is D tier is because if you use it, you most likely won't even notice that it's there, and it's just a waste of an equipment slot. Speaking of a waste of equipment slot, it just really doesn't serve a purpose. I think Quickie Baby mentioned this before, and he was right about this. Having stationary camo is kind of pointless if you're just gonna sit in a bush anyway, right? Like, if you're gonna be stationary, sit in a bush. And as soon as you start moving, this thing is completely useless. which means it's terrible for light tanks, because light tanks are all about using your mobility to get into the good position for scouting. Now, it's not going to help you if you get spotted on the way to the bush, if you know what I mean. There's just better alternatives. I mean, look, if you want to scout and you want to increase your camo, low noise is the way to go. Optics. There isn't much to say about optics other than it's B tier. It's a cut above C tier in that lots of tanks will benefit from using this. View range is always good, of course. Generally speaking, if you've got a tank that doesn't have any like huge glaring problems, like it's extremely slow or it has extremely bad gun handling or whatever, you could just throw on optics and it's always a solid choice. Being able to spot things, especially in the late game at max view range, is very, very good. And even if you don't care about that, just the fact that you will get little snippets of spotting here and there on any map is overall a good piece of equipment. CVS. Okay, so the thing is with CVS, Commander's Vision System, is that it reduces enemy camouflage behind bushes and I think while moving as well. The thing is, only lights and mediums can use it. If you're a light tank, S tier. If you're a medium tank, F tier. I'm sorry, Quickie Baby, but like putting light tank equipment on a medium tank just doesn't make sense, alright? So I'm going to put it in C tier because it's not that the equipment is bad, but it's only useful for lights. That's what these two are, the low noise and CVS. They're only useful for lights. Whereas optics is also useful for lights and mediums and heavies. So it's not quite C tier level. Enhanced gunline drive. I think this will come as no surprise to anyone that it's an immediate F tier. The thing is, with gunline drive is it's very misleading and very confusing, okay? It says it'll reduce your aim time by 10%. This does not mean you will aim 10% faster. It does not mean that. The problem with World of Tanks and this whole aiming thing is that they're very unclear about it. If you want, you can reference the Ultimate Gun Mechanics by Overlord Prime. It's a very good paper. It's very useful. I'll just quickly mention that aim time and dispersion, their relationship to the time is not linear, okay? When it says it'll reduce your aim time by 10%, it'll actually reduce the time it takes to aim by some unknown percent that's less. I can go into great detail, mathematical detail, and I was going to. I had like a little diagram and everything. It's not needed. Consider this. If you want to reduce how long it takes to aim, there are three options. Vert stabs, gun lane drive, improve rotation mechanism. Gun lane drive is the worst out of all three, so there's no reason to use it. The only time you would want to use it is, for example, the Foch B or the FV 4005. Because with the Foch B, you would want to use a gun lane drive in conjunction with a rotation mechanism so that you can aim faster than your intra-clip reload, right? So this is a very specific case. Or the FE 4005, where its whole gimmick is that it can one-shot, like a huge damaging shot, in which case you would want to improve the gun. Other than that, those are like literally the only two examples I can think of. Maybe the KV2 if you really wanted, but other than that, you were better off using vert stabs or improved rotation mechanism. Anyway, hardening. I think this comes as no surprise. Maybe a surprise to some of you, but the fact that you can just have 10% more health, it's just game winning. Of course, let's say you have 2,000 health and now you're at 2,200 health. Most tanks' alpha damage is like 500. It's not going to prevent you from being killed, some of the time, right? If you're on 200 health versus 1 health, you're still a one-shot either way. However, what it does do is, if you get splashed by artillery, it could be the difference between life or death. If you get set on fire, it could be the difference between life or death. Additionally, if you're in the late game, for example, you're fighting an enemy, his gun does 400 damage. Your health is 400. Now it's a 50-50 if he'll kill you in one shot. So now you gotta play passively. You don't want to take that risk. But if you have hardening, now you have 600 health. Now you can take the shot and progress the game. If somebody low rolls you or even high rolls you, it could be the difference between life or death. And if you can survive that one extra shot and you actually kill him, you're still in the game. Then you could play passively and extend your game for 2, 3, 4 times as long. Hardening is probably one of the best equipment in the game. Now, the reason I don't put it in S tier is because there's one piece of equipment that's probably more used than anything else, and you probably can guess what it is. But think of it this way. By increasing your health by 10%, that can also be thought of as decreasing the enemy's DPM by 10%. Think about that. If there was an equipment called like the negative rammer or something, where it was enemy tanks have a 10% decrease in DPM when fighting you, of course you would take that. That's a no-brainer. That's insane. In fact, this combined with the rammer means that the DPM disparity is 20%. So yeah, hardening, if you can take it on a heavy or medium or heavy TD, it's usually worth it. Speaking of TDs, it also improves your track health, which means tank destroyers will not have their tracks removed in one shot, which is huge. Or even heavy tanks. You're side scraping, you're angling, and people are trying to go for your tracks all the time, right? Now your tracks have more health. It truly is one of the best equipment. Next, Grousers. Okay, most of you probably think it's F tier. It's actually, I think it's probably D tier. The interesting thing is, people often say, if I want to go faster, why would I use Grousers when I could just use a turbo? And of course, that's true. The Turbocharger does increase your max top speed and your horsepower. However, there are certain tanks in which you can, if you only had to use one equipment, the Grousers would be better. Let me show you. We all know the IS-7 has a high top speed, but it can't really reach its top speed unless it's going downhill, right? Okay. 59.6. However, this is its actual top speed on hard terrain, so hard, flat terrain, 51. The i7 can go 51.5. Let's put turbo on it. Okay, your top speed has increased to 63.6, but you're still not going to reach it. What you're actually going to reach is 55.3. Okay, so good, we've increased our top speed by a little bit. What about Grousers? 56. That's very interesting. So, you've actually increased your top speed on flat terrain more than a turbo would. Now, of course, remember, going downhill, the turbo will win. It'll reach its top speed. However, flat terrain on all hard, medium, and soft, Grousers, in this specific tank, the i7, gives you more top speed. And it also makes you turn quicker. So, if you're ever wondering if you should use a turbo or Grousers, consider this. Is the tank you are playing able to reach its top speed? If no, go on Tanks GG and compare turbo to Grousers. Because, okay, look, check this out. Let's look at the TS5, for example, okay? Let's try it with a turbo and then with Grousers. As you can see, on soft terrain, the Grousers increase the top speed more than turbo did. In fact, it even makes it turn quicker, which is very useful for a tank destroyer. The thing is, the TS5 has enough engine power and terrain resistances to reach its top speed on hard and medium terrain. So the turbo actually is useful because you will reach the increased top speed. So there you go. The point is, Grousers can work in very isolated, specific circumstances, okay? Otherwise, it's got to go into D tier. So it's like C tier in that there are better alternatives, except this one has such a niche use on such few tanks that it's D tier. Improved configuration. This is a bit of a weird one, okay? On most tanks, it's F tier, but on some tanks, it's S tier. It's a game changer. Some tanks have just horrendous fuel tanks or ammo rack durability, so I'll just put it in C tier. If your tank, like for example the LT432, is constantly getting burst into flames, maybe you could make an argument to use this. Or you could just use a fire extinguisher. Also, this thing is like maybe B tier, maybe... The problem is there's a new piece of equipment. Yep, Yeah, so overall on most tanks, it's not really needed. However, on a handful of tanks, it is a complete game changer. So we'll just put it in C tier. There are better alternatives. But like, for example, if I had to choose between Spall Liner or Config, I would choose Config 100% of the time. Radio. That's just gonna go into F tier, alright? Like, I don't know why Wargaming added this. It increases how long enemy tanks are spotted for by 1.5 seconds, and it decreases how long you've been spotted for by 1.5 seconds. The thing is, there's a crew skill called Designated Target that does the same thing, but it's 2 seconds. It increases enemy vehicles being lit for 2 seconds. Additionally, like the crew skill, this only works at the tank you're aiming at. You have to physically aim at a tank for this to work. So, it's useless. When you're thinking of scouting for a light tank, this is your equipment. That's it, okay? Trading this for any one of these is a huge, stupid, dumb idea. Improved rotation mechanism. At first, I thought it would be B tier. The thing is, something came to my attention that puts it in C tier. And generally speaking, there are better alternatives to this anyway. What improved rotation mechanism does is it's basically a weaker vert stabs, but it also makes you turn quicker. So, if you're looking to decrease your dispersion, you just go with vert stabs all the time. Now, tank destroyers can't use vert stabs, so then you could make do with this. Like, T110E4, T110E3, 268 version 4, right? Those kind of things. Then yes, you could use this. But never in a million years, on any sort of normal tank, heavy, medium, would you put this improved rotation mechanism over a vert stab. Because the vert stab is just better. Additionally, so the improved rotation mechanism improves your hull traverse speed, and if you have a turret, it increases your turret rotation speed, or if you don't have a turret, it increases your gun traverse speed, okay? So basically you could turn faster. The thing is, the bloom of your tank is dependent on your traverse speed. Prove it to you right here. Your rotation and turret dispersion values is dependent on your traverse speeds. So increasing your traverse speeds means that when you see someone spotted to your left and you quickly aim over, yes, your gun will get there quicker, but now you gotta aim for longer. So overall, it's a very strange mechanic. We'll put it in C tier because it does have its uses for certain tanks, and it's not like a terrible equipment choice. It's just that vertical stabilizers are better. Improved aiming. This is gonna have to go into C tier as well. Like everything else in C tier, they're not bad, they work, but there are better alternatives. But in the case of the improved aiming, there is actually no alternative. This improves your base accuracy, and nothing else will do that other than like food or something. But the reason it's C tier is because the change is not that significant. Will you notice your tank being more accurate? On certain tanks, it can help. For example, SU-130 PM, supposed to be a sniper, misses every shot. You would use this then. However, I wouldn't even bother with the regular one. I would only really use a bounty one. Other tanks it can be useful for is the FV4005. It's sort of a niche item. The thing is though, a lot of people put this on their Leopard, their Sturv, very accurate tanks, Grill 15 for example. I guess the idea is that the tank's main strength is that it's very accurate, so let's improve the accuracy even more. The problem is, this is a percentage, right? 10% of 0.1 is 0.01. It's very small. What this is useful for is not for tanks that are very accurate and you're going to improve the accuracy, because you won't notice. You really won't. What this is useful for is tanks that are inaccurate with a very long reload. Because think of it this way. You're in a tortoise, reloads in 5 seconds. You miss a shot, doesn't matter. You'll be reloaded in 5 seconds. You just put another one in. A tank like the FV4005, damn near 29 seconds reload. 29 damn seconds. That's when you might want to use this, because you have to hit the shot. If you don't hit the shot, it is a huge penalty to your damage output. Improved aiming, it's useful for tanks with long reloads that are inaccurate. Vents. Improving the all-around nature of your vehicle has got to be B tier. But it's not. I'm going to have to put it in F tier for clickbait, but in reality it's D tier. Here, let me explain something to you. Vents increase your crew skills by 5%. This means all the stats of your tank that are affected by crew skills goes up by 2.5%. That's just how it works. A 2.5% increase is useless. It's not worth it. Here, let's do a comparison. We'll use the TS5 again, okay? There you go. Nothing, vents. Your reload goes from 8.15 to 7.97. It's 200 milliseconds, basically. Your aim time decreased by an insignificant amount. Your accuracy decreased by an insignificant amount. Your top speed increased by, again, an insignificant amount. And your view range increased by 7 whole meters. Okay, 8 whole meters. This view range increase is pretty much only useful for lights. Because when lights are fighting each other, it literally comes down to, assuming they both have CVS, who has the higher view range. So vents could be useful for lights. But then again, using vents on lights means you have to drop optics, CVS, or low noise. The thing is, a 2.5% increase in camouflage is not matched by a 7% increase in camouflage. These tiny little increases are just not worth it. And of course, you could put the vents in the slot, the special slot, but I mean, you'd probably want to put a rammer in the special slot, right? I'm sorry to break it to you, but even these C tier equipment would make more of a noticeable change to the gameplay than vents. The only time vents are useful, for example, the EBR 105, where you need to crank up your view range right to 445, and the only way to do it is to combine optics and vents. Then maybe. Another use for vents is autoloaders that have a very, very long reload. So for example, if we compare the G-SOAR 1008, because you don't have a rammer, then sure, perhaps you can use ventilation. Alright, your reload goes from 44 to 43. That 1 second, I guess, could make the difference. In a meta dominated by having the most armor, or the most insane firepower, or the most insane speed, boosting little tiny characteristics here and there overall is not going to give you any discernible advantage over the enemy. All the equipment above can give you an advantage over the enemy. Let's move on to rammer. I mean, that came as no surprise to anyone. It's S tier. Being able to reload 10% quicker just means you kill things quicker. You get that extra shot in. It's just better. And like the ultimate combo, rammer and hardening. Your DPM increased by 10%. The enemy DPM decreased by 10%. 20% overall. This is a killer combo. Yeah, but I don't know. There's not really much else to discuss. Everybody knows rammer is the best. There are certain tanks where you might not want to use a rammer. Mainly the shit barn, the FV4005. I mean, this reload is so long, the gameplay revolves around you just waiting. That's what it is. You're just waiting patiently for that heavy tank to poke, or that, him to turn his turret slightly, then you come around the corner and blast him, right? This thing is not a DPM monster. You don't need a reload. What you want to do is make sure the shot connects. In that case, yeah, maybe you don't need a rammer. I'd certainly don't use a rammer on my shit barn. Next, binocular telescope. I mean, it's not useless in that it could be in the F tier, but again, it increases your view range, but you have to stay still. I understand that there are certain low tiers, right, that absolutely need this in order to see anything. But optics is the way to go, because most of the time you're not sitting still unless you're some sort of base camping TD. But if you're a base camping TD, then people are spotting for you anyway. You very rarely use this. You would just want to use optics instead. Next, Turbocharger. Come as no great surprise. Yep, that's an A tier placement right there. I mean, being able to go forward faster just means you get into positions quicker. Like, think Berlin, right? Everybody's rushing to get to the hull down. With the turbo, you're the first one there. So it also increases your reverse speed, which is very useful, especially on tanks, for example, like the shit barn. 8 kilometers reverse speed. Wargaming knew what they were doing when they were balancing this thing out. This thing comes around corners, blasts someone for like almost all their health, if not one-shotting them entirely. But then it gets punished because it can't retreat back into cover. Lots of tanks benefit from an increased reverse speed. And the best part about turbo is that because it's not a percentage, it's flat, that tanks that are very slow, T95, Maus, E3, all that, you just increase their top speed. They actually get a sizable increase to their mobility. It's a fantastic piece of equipment. And as you can tell, a lot of the top players, this is what they do, okay? Rammer, Hardening, Turbo. This is a great combo for tanks that can use it, alright? Now, don't twist this the wrong way and think every single tank should have this equipment loadout, right? No. If your tank doesn't have horrendous dispersion, you already have enough view range, then you go for these. This is also why you see a lot of top players in tanks that already have good gun handling, good all-around characteristics. There isn't like a huge problem with them. They'll go with this setup, Rammer, Hardening, Turbo, because, well, fundamentally, if you think about it, there's 3 elements to a tank, right? It's durability, mobility, and firepower. Well, these 3 pieces of equipment boosts all 3 of those categories by the most amount. Rammer gives you the most firepower. Hardening gives you the most survivability. Turbo gives you the highest mobility increase. But like I said before, there's no point in jacking up your DPM if you can't hit a single shot. Now, the new experimental equipment. The thing is, I don't think most people have used them because you can't really buy them. You get like, I think, 2 of each, and that's it. The one that I have used is this one, I don't know what this is called, but it's the one that combines hardening and modified config. This is good, because on tanks that I would want to use modified config, instead I go with this, just so I can get more health, because like I said, health is always good. These 2 pieces of equipment, I'm not really sure where to put them, to be honest. I've tampered with them on certain tags, like Skoda T56, BZ176, Foch-B, tanks that you would want to decrease their aim time as well as their dispersion values, or you want to decrease their aim time and dispersion while also getting a mobility increase. It's weird. It's not that these are a bad piece of equipment. I'll put them in B tier, I think. I think that's fine. Don't quote me on these 2. I don't have much experience with these 2. But this is also very good. Choose hardening. If you find you keep getting set on fire, you keep getting ammo racked, you keep getting all these crits, go for whatever thing is called. When I say go for them, don't bother with the tier 1. The tier 1 is not very good. Tier 2 is okay. Tier 3 is where I actually think that it's worth using these pieces of equipment. When I talk about these equipment, I'm usually referring to bounty equipment. Bounty rammer, bounty vert stabs, optics, bounty low noise, and bounty improved aiming. Bounty equipment is very good. You should always use them. So, for example, if you're grinding out a tank, it's worth spending some gold to put those pieces of equipment on it. Now, bond equipment. It's useless. Bond equipment is useless. Yeah, you heard me right. Bond equipment is useless because bounty equipment exists. Let's just compare E100, for example. Sure, we'll go with the E100, okay? E100 with a bounty rammer, because of course, that's probably the first item you're going to get, right? You're going to get a bounty rammer or bond rammer, and then we'll compare it to a bond rammer, and we're going to see the difference. Okay, the difference is, we'll just quickly use the small gun because we're not savages here. The reload went from 10.07 to 9.95. Okay, your DPM went from 3,160 to 3,200. Okay, yeah, wow. Whereas this from the Battle Pass is free, and then you upgrade it for 3 million credits. So it cost credits, 3 million. This cost 5,000 freaking bonds. It's totally not worth it. And I proved it to y'all when Wargaming introduced Watt Plus. With Watt Plus, you can demount bond equipment for free. That means you only need 3 pieces of equipment. So I bet y'all feel pretty dumb for spending all your bonds on multiple pieces of rammer or vert stabs, when in reality it was a waste to begin with, but now you can just demount them for free anyway, so any duplicate pieces of equipment you have is a complete waste. And in fact, I said this long time ago when the 780 came out, to not waste your bonds on equipment. Here it is, here's the post. Chems, why do you have so many bonds? You should buy some bond equipment. Nah, I don't think I will. The 780? The tank that everybody spent like, I don't know, what was it, 200 euros to get? I got it for free. I just spent my bonds. And like I said, still saving my bonds for when they release the Waffly 100. We'll just add that to the list of things Chems has said that turned out to be true. In all seriousness, bond equipment, not worth it when you have bounty equipment. Now, here's the thing. I get that some people don't want to spend money on the battle pass, and they can earn bonds normally. So if you're going from standard equipment to bond equipment, I guess then it might be worth it. But if you have bounty equipment, there's no reason to get bond equipment. Anyway, here's the tier list. I know a lot of you Quickie Baby enjoyers will probably be writing up in the comments how this vent should be, S tier. It's the greatest equipment of all time. To that I say, thanks for watching, and fuck off.